A very good day to you, our viewer, and welcome to Elgon Kenya's series of web-based learning. Today we will be talking about chicken, matters poultry, and we'll specifically talk about a poultry disease called coccidiosis. Elgon Kenya is a giant agri-inputs supplier in Kenya, located on East Gate Road of Mombasa Road. And among others, Elgon Kenya offers fertilizers, seeds, irrigation technology, greenhouse sheetings, packaging solutions, and animal health products. At Elgon Kenya, we embrace the philosophy of transforming farms and lives through technology. We link farmers, science, and technology. To take us through this session will be our resident vet, Dr. Belinda Koech, who mans our Information Resource Center and interacts with farmers that visit us. And our technical expert today will be Dr. Salome Karanja, who will be answering the questions. So karibu, Daktari Belinda.
Thank you so much, Daktari. So I'll just jump right in with the questions. These are some of the questions that we frequently get from customers. So a farmer approached us complaining that his birds have blood droppings. What could be the cause of that?
Bloody droppings in birds or bloody poop from a bird could be caused by different aspects or different things, some of which are coccidiosis, a high worm infestation whereby the birds have been infected by high numbers of the worms. They eat up the wall of the intestine and the blood can be seen in the poop, or the bird could have suffered cannibalism, whereby the bird could have been pecked by another bird, and as it pooped, you can see some blood staining in its poop. Cannibalism could be caused by mainly by the excessive lighting in the house, and that one is a topic that you can handle it in another day because it's a whole topic by itself.
Okay, so you mentioned coccidiosis. Can you please tell us more about coccidiosis?
Coccidiosis is a disease that is caused by a protozoa, and the protozoa infect the walls of the intestine of a bird. And once it gets infect the walls, it eats up and it causes some oozing of the blood in the intestine. It mainly affects young birds, mainly from the age of 3 weeks. That's when you start realizing the birds could be having that challenge. And let me mention this, that protozoa naturally occur in the gut lumen of a bird, and therefore it is passed out in the poop. If it happens to infect the environment and the birds ingest those protozoa, that's when the disease comes down, or the birds comes down with the disease.
So I understand there are two types of coccidiosis.
Yeah, there are two types of coccidiosis depending on the section in which the protozoa affect. If the protozoa happen to affect the small intestine, the gut of a bird is divided into different portions. There is stomach, there is crop, there is proventricular. Now I'm talking specifically about the small intestines, whereby the digestion of the food takes place and the absorption of the food takes place. If the protozoa gets and infect that part where digestion takes place, that's when you realize there will be once the protozoa infect the intestinal wall, it eats up and the blood oozes out, and it is the blood is digested, and that's how it will show in the signs that we can see later on. We're going to discuss about how the disease comes out. If it infects also the cecum or the cecum is that part of the intestine past. If you look at the way the God created the bird, it has different parts. There is stomach, the small intestine. Just past the small intestine, there's a place whereby the wall, it's like it diverts into two. And where it diverts into two, that's where maybe the grass the birds eat. That's when it's grinded, and other things takes place. Now, if the protozoa affect those parts, they call the cica, that's when we call it the coccidiosis. And the coccidiosis and the intestinal coccidiosis are differentiated depending on the signs that are shown.
So these differentiations, intestinal, how does it look like? Fecal, how does it look like?
All right, let me go into detail that when the protozoa affect the small intestine, it will infect the cell walls or the lining of the small intestine. Once it affects that there is it will eat up the wall, and the blood will ooze out into the lumen of the small intestine. Once the blood comes out, it is digested like food, and once the blood passes out, the feces will be of a different color, showing there is the blood that have been digested. Now it will be like yellowish, it will turn to brownish, and it can turn to blood. That is coccidiosis. On the other hand, if the protozoa affect the cica, that's where the lumen or the walls of the cecum has been eaten up or has been destroyed, and there is bleeding that takes place inside. The blood just gets there, inside there, but because there's no digestion, the blood will just poop out blood, and that's why you can easily differentiate between the two. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us now, how does the disease come about? What is the pathogenesis of coccidiosis?
The disease comes about, or it develops in the gut of the bird, in that the protozoa are usually in the environment, and once the bird ingests high quantities of the protozoa, it passes through the digestive system of the bird, and once it gets to the environment where it thrives or it feels good, it can multiply and it can excel in that environment. So it gets inside the cell wall of the lining of the small intestine. Once it gets inside there, it multiplies and it comes out. As it comes out, it destroys that cell it had infected, and it comes out when there are many. So once they come out, they infect others, and as they get in, they cause damage. As they come out, they cause the damage. And with that one, we realize there will be some wounds that will be along the lining of the small intestine or the cecum, and the blood will be seen, and the digestion. And with all those, as all this is happening, you realize the bird health will definitely be affected, and it will lead to some of the signs the birds will show, as we continue to discuss later.
Okay. So how is this disease transmitted? Where are the birds getting the infection from?
Like I said earlier, if a bird becomes infected or with the Zika, one bird eats the coccidia, it passes down, destroyed, and it is passed out in the poop. So it will come into the environment. It will just poop wherever the bird stays. That will infect the litter. The litter can equally infect the feeds because the birds have a habit of scratching the ground. It can infect the drinkers and the feeders. So what will happen is that the bird will eventually eat that. Let me say the bird will eat its poop. Remember we said the protozoa are released in the poop. It will literally eat its poop. And that's what we call fecal-oral route of infection. Yes, that's how they get. And let me mention this, that once the protozoa are in the environment, they require a certain kind of environment for them to multiply and infect the bird. Remember, I mentioned earlier that the protozoa occur naturally in the environment. It's only become important, or it causes a disease if it is ingested by the bird in large quantities. Meaning that once the bird passes out the protozoa in the environment, the protozoa require a certain environment for it to thrive or multiply, for it to cause a disease. And this environment means it needs to be wet and warm for it to multiply and increase in number, for it to be large enough to cause a disease in a bird.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would assume this wet environment is some of the predisposing factors.
Exactly.
So can you tell us more about that?
Some of the predisposing factors, or the environment to which, or the things that could cause the bird to get infected with coccidiosis, is one of them is a wet litter. How does a wet litter comes about in a chicken bird, you may ask? We usually keep a bird in an environment and it provides some bedding wherever they move around, they scratch, they wash themselves to express their natural habit. Now, in that very environment, there are drinkers and feeders, is it? Now, if it happens that by accident, you have not placed your drinkers in the right environment or in the right levels where they're supposed to be, definitely the water will come down. Maybe you might be placing those feeders on the floor. The bird, as it eats, naturally how it behaves, that it beds down, drinks some water, and it thank God as it swallows the water. It goes down and it swallows the water. Now, if you place the water down, as the bird comes out, some of them drips out. So you realize as they do that, they can easily spill the water. At the same time, if you place the feeders on the ground, as they move around, the birds don't know they don't have the etiquette. They use a drinker, they just move around. They can just hit it and the water will just spill out. At the same time, if you place the drinkers high up, as they continue, they try to reach out into the water. And at the same time, they can easily spill the water. So you realize that can cause the water to spill out. And you realize if you get to the chicken house, mostly wherever the drinker is, that's when you realize the litter is wet, unless the roof is leaking. That's another area in whereby the litter can get wet. That's one of the major factors that provide a good wet environment for the litter, for the protozoa to flourish. Another factor that causes the birds or can predispose or can expose the birds to get infected to the coccidia is when they are overcrowded. If you put many birds in a small squeezed room, as they move around, they will hit the drinkers. At the same time, as they pass out their poop, they will just definitely wet the litter. Another factor that predisposes the birds to coccidiosis is poor nutrition. If the birds are not being fed well, they will have a poor health and their immunity will be very poor. Therefore, they cannot prevent themselves from this infection. Another thing is stressed birds. Maybe the birds they are not well kept. The farmer is not taking care of them well. They just look stressed. They are rushing for the food. The ration is not okay. Those are the stressed birds. Stressed birds can easily get infected with coccidiosis.
Thank you so much.
Daktari, allow I clarify something on the aspect of wet litter. It is important to emphasize that the level of water in the drinker at all times ought to be the same level as the back of the bird, so that as the birds grow, the farmer needs to be raising the drinker. And that is the reason why you have the same age birds in one house, so that they are all the same size roughly, and the level, the water level in the drinkers should always be the same as the back of the bird. Otherwise, if it is too high, the birds will have to crane their necks and they'll pour and spill water. If it is too low, they'll have to bend down, and as they scoop the water, they will again pour the water. So the area around the drinkers will then get wet, and that will be a good environment for the multiplication of protozoal parasites.
Thank you so much, Daktari, for that addition. Salome, back to you. Yeah. We mentioned bloody droppings as the first question up there. Yeah. Are there other clinical signs that a farmer should look out for?
Yeah, there are signs that a farmer should look out for to rule out or to rule in coccidiosis. One thing I should mention is that if the bird is sick, whichever it may be coccidia or any other, it usually shows what we call a sick bird syndrome. And this one can also be seen in cases of coccidiosis. The sick bird syndrome is whereby the bird they handle together, they drop their wings, they are off feeds, they are not drinking, they look unhappy in general. That's a sick bird syndrome. Now, in addition to sick bird syndrome, you may realize that in early stages of coccidiosis development, you will realize that their feces have some mucus. That's an indication there is some irritation in their digestive system. Also, you will realize that the diarrhea will start coming in, and it will come in as deep yellow, it will turn to brownish, turn into black, and it can as well be bloody diarrhea. By the time the birds are showing bloody diarrhea, some of them will have already died. So you may realize some birds are dead by the time the farmer is reporting to a vet. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the birds look unhappy, so farmers should always be aware of their bird's happiness.
Yes, it is very, very, very important to notice the signs of a happy bird. A happy bird is the one that moves around, go take some feed somewhere in a certain feeder. They can go and drink some feed somewhere. They can as well express their natural habit, where they just sit down on the litter and they wash themselves with the bedding that you have provided. That's a happy bird. But if you see them just handling together, making some chipping sounds, that's a sign that the birds are not happy. Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
So what is the economic significance of coccidiosis in poultry farming?
Coccidiosis is very significant in that, or we can discuss this when we're discussing about the losses that we incur when the coccidiosis set into the farm. There are different ways in which the losses present itself. One of them, we realize the birds may die. That's a direct loss. If it's a bird that were laying, some of them have died, so definitely they're not getting some eggs from them. Maybe the broilers, you had 100 birds and we get coccidiosis at the age of 3 weeks, 4 of them die. That's a loss to you. So directly, that's one of the economic significance of the bird dying directly. That's the direct loss. Once the bird gets sick, you need to you consult a vet who comes and tells you that these your birds are suffering from coccidiosis, and after that, what do? You pay. That's another economic significance. You pay a cost for a vet, and once the vet comes in, he prescribed a drug for you to go and buy so that you can treat it. But that's another economic loss for us as a farmer. Another thing is that for broiler farming, for broilers, they don't gain weight as per the required. Ideally, the broiler should go to the market at the age of 35 days. But once they get infected with coccidiosis, you realize they will take longer in the farm to gain the optimum weight of about 1.6 kgs dress weight. So they will take longer for them to achieve that weight. As a result, you're feeding them, you're giving them water, you're giving them some supplementation, and that one is a loss for you. If you come to the layers, or during that time they are infected, the birds are not eating very well and they are sick, the production definitely go down. What does that mean? There are no eggs that you're collecting. So at the end of the day, there's no cash money that is coming in. At the same time, during the treatment time, there is withdrawal period where you're not supposed to sell or eat those eggs. That will translate to a loss as a farmer. So it is very, very important for us to learn and get to know more about coccidiosis so that we can alleviate on these losses. Yeah.
So all these losses you mentioned,
yes,
there's this habit where farmers, when their birds are sick,
yeah,
it's not and eat. Is there an effect when someone eats intestines of a bird affected by coccidiosis?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Now, naturally, when you can't get infected by coccidia as a human being, but from aesthetic point of view, it is not good to eat that. I'm not saying that it's not healthy. The intestine look rather infected. There is a lot of blood inside, so it is not good, and it is not happy. You can't be happy taking it. So as a vet, I want to recommend you eating the intestine.
Yes, for aesthetic reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Coccidiosis.
Yes.
What are the available treatment options?
Thank goodness it's a cure for coccidiosis. It's not like COVID. Yeah? Coccidiosis can be treated. And us as in Kenya, we have a super drug that strike coccidiosis very, very fast. We have a super drug by the name Amprocox. Why do I call it super drug? Actually, this is it's one of my best drugs around. Amprocox is a super drug in that it has 3 ingredient of treatment in one, and each one of them have the work it does. It has amprolium. Amprolium is a specific treatment for coccidiosis, in that once it is given to a bird, it strikes down the coccidia, which is wreaking havoc in the intestine of the bird. And it has another one called sulfur. Sulfur is an antibiotic that has anti-coccidia activity, meaning it can as well take care of coccidia, but it works better if it is combined with amprolium. And in addition to taking care of coccidiosis, it also prevents any secondary bacterial infection, meaning it takes care of any bacteria that may come in as opportunistic. Now, because the bird is sick, the intestine are not okay, the opportunistic bacteria that can come to cause more infection in a bird. Therefore, the sulfur takes care of that secondary bacterial infection. It also has another ingredient called vitamin K. Vitamin K is very, very important because it is involved in arresting or stopping bleeding in the lumen. You remember I mentioned earlier during the development of the disease, there is usually some wounds that are usually caused in the lumen of the intestine, and there is bleeding that takes place in the lumen of the intestine. So vitamin K comes in to arrest that bleeding, and that's why it is very, very important for us to go for amprocox. We recommend that every time you are treating your birds with amprocox, it is very important to combine with a stress mix. Stress mix is a multivitamin, and multivitamins are very important during the treatment of any bird because the vitamins help to alleviate stress. As the name suggests, stress mix. It alleviates stress and it helps the bird to bounce back to the production. It increases their immunity so that they can continue fighting the coccidia. So it is very, very important for you to combine the two treatment in the treatment of coccidiosis. Now, somebody may ask me, how will I administer these drugs? The drugs are supposed to be prescription drugs. So when you call a vet, he's going to prescribe for you how to use it. But for the sake of today's lesson, let us discuss how you're going to use amprocox. For every 5 liters of water your bird consumes, you should put a teaspoon of amprocox. For every teaspoon of amprocox, you put it in every 5 liters of water, and you should always combine it with stress mix. The dosage for stress mix is slightly higher, whereby that teaspoon will go for 10 liters of water. So I would recommend we measure 10 liters of water, you put 2 teaspoons of amprocox and 1 teaspoon of stress mix in that 10 liters of water. Let the bird take the treated water throughout. If you find the water is very dirty, it's good you make a change, you provide clean water. Let it be taken, and once the water spends the night, the following day, please dispose the remaining water, clean up your drinkers, and make a fresh preparation. Please do that for 5 days.
Thank you so much, Helena.
Yeah.
So we've discussed treatment.
Yes.
What about prevention?
Yes, the coccidiosis is, as I mentioned earlier, is treatable and preventable. As we look at the ways in which we should prevent coccidiosis, we should look at ways in which that deny the coccidia environment to multiply. We provide an environment whereby it cannot multiply to a level of causing the disease. This one is by, one of them is management of stress. Whichever condition that causes stress, if you're changing feeds from this company to another, that causes a lot of stress because different companies taste differently and the birds tend not to eat that food. That time there is a lot of stress. Or if the birds have been moved to another, from one environment to another, or if you're shifting the feeds from maybe chick mash to growers mash, during that time is a stressful time for chicken. So it is very important to manage that. And how do you manage that? It's good to always have, we call it Panadol. This one will elevate stress for the bird, as the name suggests. It's a stress mix. It will take care of the stresses for the birds. Like the way you cannot bring up a young child without paracetamol in the house. Yes. So it is very important when you have the chicks or the chicken in your farm, always have stress mix to manage that stress. Another thing I will discuss about the management or prevention of the coccidiosis is the stocking levels. It is very, very important to keep the birds in the right stocking levels. If it's for stocking levels and the spacing. If you're keeping broilers, please consider the spacing of 1 square foot per bird. If they are layers, consider using 2 square foot per bird. And if it's the local bird, the kienyeji, use 1.5 square feet per bird. That one will make sure that the birds have enough space and there will be no overcrowding. The other thing, like Dr. said, we should always manage the water levels for the birds. I don't want to add what he discussed, but it is very, very important to consider the water levels of the birds in a flock. Yes. I think those are the major ways in which you can prevent the disease.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Helena, for these explanations. They are very insightful.
Yeah.
Now the Panadol
Yes.
and the Afrocox.
Yes, yes.
Are they readily available?
Yes, the drugs are readily available. As Elgon Kenya, we have a very good distribution network, and these products are readily available to the nearest agrovet, where you can find either a vet or a paravet. You will find them stocked in those shops.
So farmers can get them there.
Yes, they're readily available.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So I'll hand it back to Dr. to finish for us.
Thank you very much, Belinda, and our in-house expert for that very detailed discussion on coccidiosis, one of the very important poultry diseases that farmers are likely to find, especially those ones doing broilers, because of the intensive nature of broiler farming. As Dr. Salome mentioned, when birds are a bit congested, then that becomes a factor in spreading of this disease. And you realize broilers are kept a bit more intensively, requiring about a square foot per bird, as opposed to the layers. So it's a very significant disease, particularly broilers. And I think to cap it up, I want to share the telephone numbers that our viewers can contact our expert on. I'll start with Dr. Salome's number, 0726 630 777. I'll repeat, 0726 630 777. Dr. Belinda's number is 0707 901 601. 0707 901 601. My names are John Muchibi, the Animal Health Manager, Elgon Kenya. Thank you, and look out for the next discussion. Thank you.